I'm not sure Apple realizes the real issue is that they're trying to sell a Ferrari into markets that can afford a Ford. Apple doesn't have a 5G phone out. So if you're trying to convince somebody, hey, you want to spend $1,000, well, they'll go, well, does it have 5G? Well, no. So then they'll wait. So I think this year could actually be worse than last year in terms of how much the smartphone market shrinks. Apple not having 5G is an even bigger problem because carriers like Samsung are going to.
So that's the Alpha One Capital founding partner Dan Niles explaining to Maria Bartiromo the problems that Apple's facing, particularly in emerging markets like China. So Apple's down more than 35% from its all-time high reached at the beginning of last quarter. Apple leading the tech wreck, as I'll call it, of 2018 and 2019 after helping drive markets up to all-time highs. Now let's talk about tech, because everyone's converging in Las Vegas for the CES. And joining us now, someone who's heading there, Carter Reum is Silicon Valley venture capitalist, co-founder and partner at M13. He's an investor in tech names like Facebook, Tesla, and Amazon, as well as Pinterest and Lyft. And I know you're very busy, Carter. Good to see you today. So let's start with Apple, because there's a tie-in with CES with Apple. Let me show you this billboard that's causing a lot of buzz in Las Vegas. I would call it Apple trolling Silicon Valley neighbors. And as you see there, if we can bring it up, that they're basically saying that privacy is tantamount. What happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone, kind of like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But I can tell you that they're not making friends in Silicon Valley. Carter, do you agree?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I think, they're trying to find a way to navigate a very difficult situation right now. And I think they got to, when you're riding high, it's easy to have a lot of friends. And now that they find themselves having to continuously evolve and figure something out, I think they're in a much different predicament than they found themselves in the past.
A new method of trolling, as we'll call it. What about tech heading into 2019? Social media like Facebook and Snap have had a terrible 2018. Do you think that's going to continue for this year?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's going to help kind of some of the tech stocks right now is the emergence of a bunch of IPOs. I think, the IPO of kind of established businesses like Lyft, like Pinterest, I think will relieve some of the pressure from some of the more established tech guys. And I think the one thing the market showed in 2018 that I do think will continue in 2019 is they're not going to reward businesses that aren't established. So companies like Blue Apron that quite honestly didn't quite have their business model nailed, obviously have not performed well. Luckily, companies like Lyft have stayed private longer, have very good established models, very good numbers, and I think are going to perform very well in 2019.
Yeah, well, 2019 is going to be the year of the tech IPO. It's going to be the biggest since 2000. Lyft is trying to get ahead of Uber, but I should point out to you that whoever goes first will probably take up more of the investor dollars. But, Lyft is also a much smaller competitor to Uber. From what I saw, they have, maybe 30% of the U.S. market. Uber has 70%.
Yeah, I think, these two have been in friendly competition for a few years. It wasn't many years ago that Lyft had, less than about 3% of the rideshare market in the U.S. And, now accounts are about 35 or 40%. I think Lyft is going to work very hard to race out and be the first. I think they want to, get those dollars from institutional investors who want, obviously, exposure to ride sharing in the U.S. But they also know it could be a huge marketing win for them to really get their name out there and to the other, the rest of the population.
Yeah, and do you think Lyft, I guess, just to make itself more attractive against Uber, is going to go at a more attractive, reasonable valuation?
Yeah, I think that's where you'll see Lyft. I think one of the reasons they want to go first is they want to be their own comp. Obviously, there is no comp for Lyft or for Uber other than each other. I think the story with Lyft is going to be two things. One, it's going to be execution. While Uber has misstepped the last 18 months, Lyft has really executed and taken a lot of market share.
Yeah.
Then I think the second part of this story for Lyft is really going to be about runway. Right, they are the smaller competitor, but they have a lot of opportunity internationally. They've done well in Canada, and they haven't built a business like Uber has, like Uber Eats, on top of their network. So I think they'll be telling a big story about kind of the future possibilities.
Well, actually, similarly, but they're both still losing money. I think Lyft is losing maybe $250 million a quarter, whereas Uber is losing over $1 billion a quarter. I want to stay with this transport theme, Carter, and we're talking about Tesla, because Tesla, Elon Musk was in Shanghai breaking ground on his new gigafactory that will build not only batteries, but also cars as well. And it's interesting that he got in at a time when China allowed an American company to have full ownership of its own business. Now, Tesla, do you think this is a smart move for Elon Musk and Tesla in the country of China?
Yeah, I'd have to know more of the specifics and obviously not kind of in their boardroom. I think the one thing, Elon has shown to people kind of continuously is, when people think he's down, he always has a move. I think there's half the world that thinks his moves are getting harder and harder, but I think it could be a very interesting move for him. Right.
And also he needs the Chinese consumer as well, because he wants to, recently we had Tesla, of course, having to possibly downgrade they cut their price because there isn't as much demand. They're not meeting their delivery expectations according to Wall Street. And that's where China might fit into the equation, because if you can sell more electric vehicles, with electric vehicles topping, by the way, 1 million in China for the very first time in 2018, there's a new opportunity for Tesla in the future.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think Tesla finds themselves where so many tech companies find themselves. They're the early mover, but the rest of the market is coming up behind them very quickly. So obviously when he created Tesla, he was the first and the forerunner. Now you have the big car companies competing with him. And so he needs to figure out how to get, more Teslas sold. And I think China could be a great market for that.
Okay, one more question for you, because today we're seeing this seesaw battle about who's the biggest company in the world. Amazon overtaking Microsoft. For a while, it was Microsoft, kind of like the tortoise and the hare, right? Who gets there? Well, we know Amazon's a fast mover. Microsoft's been around for a long time. Where do you think the play is for 2019?
Yeah, it's hard for me to see Amazon not continuing to get stronger and stronger. I mean, when you think about their flywheel, over 100 million Prime customers. The recent news over the holidays was that they sold over 100 million Alexa devices. They just continue to build that platform out across different channels, and it's hard for me to see how they don't keep really outperforming.
Yeah, we also heard from an investor at Lake Mason that says they could double in 3 years. Double. Carter, let me just quickly talk to you about CES, since you are on your way to Las Vegas, heading to the Consumer Electronics Show. Is there anything that catches your eye or you're looking forward to checking out?
Yeah, I think the two big things are, the introduction of 5G and what that means, and then quite honestly, the connected home. For 5G, there's been, hopes of it and talk about it for a while. I think it's finally here. I think, by most accounts, it'll be 30 to 50 times faster than our current 4G. Why that's important is it will have ramifications across everything from, a more stable network for autonomous cars, more, an interesting way to, when it comes to content, things like that. So I think the ramifications for that will be enormous.
Yep.
And then, going back to Amazon, I think the second thing is the connected home. I think, obviously, the home has been connected for the last few years. When you think about 100 million Alexas are now in homes.
Okay.
When you think about the 5G, I think you're going to see a lot more in that space.
Okay, Carter, enjoy yourself. Thank you so much for your time today. Good to see you, Carter Reum there.